defining and really getting to the point of like, do I know what my ideals are? Do I know what I stand for? Do I know what I want in my life? What would ideally be happening? Okay, now let's start to ease our way into those things at a rate that they understand and that keeps them at a manageable stress level so they can hang with it long enough for those things to become habits. Without that kind of coaching, they go balls to the wall on and everything, change their diet overnight, go see a personal trainer, go to the class, and then they burn out and they wonder why they burnt out. And it's like, because that's not going to make you happy. You know what I mean? So it's this great irony. I was talking to a client last week of, you have to understand that momentary discomfort, in other words, not eating the very most beautiful, wonderful tasting food at every given moment is going to make you more uncomfortable and happier at the same time. That's one of life's great ironies. Like, not doing the drug is going to make you happier. The drug will make you feel better in the moment, but giving that up and being less comfortable in the moment is actually going to deliver you a happier life, which is about day to day. And that's a tough sell for people, right? Because they want to feel that good right there all the time. And it's usually a recipe for disaster.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and we are on a mission to create a better world. We are here 100% to assist athletes who are ready to step it up and look at what they are contributing to the world each day through their thoughts, words, and actions. Because we believe as we clean up our inner house, our outer house will also be better. When we become more aware and take action on what we see within ourselves that is keeping us from joy, we allow for more flow, more authentic expression, and above all else, more happiness. Beej and I are fired up to have Sid Garza Hillman back in the house today, and perhaps a little extra pumped on account of his new book, The 6 Truths. Live by these truths and be happy. Don't, and you won't. Plain and simple are a few of the reasons why we love this guy. Sid is also author of Approaching the Natural, a health manifesto, and Raising Healthy Parents, Small Steps, Less Stress, and a Thriving Family. He graduated from UCLA with a BA in philosophy. He is a public speaker, podcast host, certified nutrition, small steps coach, race director of one of the only vegan ultras in the country, Mendocino 50K, and perhaps even more importantly, podcast guest of YTP 52, launched in May of 2017. So enough of this one-sided chat. I cannot wait to dive into this convo. Sid, buddy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to see you guys. It really is. I was really excited to
my
I've
gosh.
been like a giddy school kid all night.
Yeah, we've been giddy too.
Only 4 more hours.
2 more sleeps. 2 more sleeps. 1 more sleep.
Slow breathing.
I know. And then here we are. And we just threw down a podcast before we hit record. So I don't know. We kind of thinking this one might be junk, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we got nothing. We burnt through every bit of information. It was a 4-hour lead up of chatter before the podcast started.
Totally.
So, sorry for your listeners.
So Beej and I have both read the book, The 6 Truths. We love it. It's totally our language with a lot of different words than what we use. The way that you articulate, there's themes throughout every single one of these 6 truths that are the same. But the way that you articulate kind of the same thing over and over again, I think helps people grasp it from different ways of what their perspective is. But when it all comes down to it, it's like something I always say, it's like the work is always the same.
Yeah.
It's always the same. It's very, very simple. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's very simple. And I have so many notes from the book, and we're going to just start diving into them. But my first question is, how did this book come about?
Well, I'm a longtime, as you know, coach of nutrition, and now I'm a certified running coach, so getting into that and some oxygen. I'm an Oxygen Advantage breathing instructor, so I'm kind of folding all that into my small steps approach. And just working with people, realizing, we sometimes get distracted by diets. We sometimes get distracted by a number of quick fix plans, working with even personal trainers. And I don't mean those are negatives. I want people to work with whoever needs, whatever help they can get to get what their goals are. But I kept coming back to this one thing of like, if you don't nail down the fact that anything you're doing is probably because you want to be happier, that you want to live a happy life, a fulfilled life. If you forget that, then you go down the rabbit hole of, knowing too much about nutrition and getting data gathering and counting your calories, or going into the fitness realm of pulse and again, data gathering. We sort of get lost in the weeds of things, except for when we have a good foundation and grounding in our desire to be happy. And when we accept that and realize that there's work associated, like you said, then we can manage how we get into any individual thing, how we do diet. Like if you just want to be happy, chances are you're not going to be a yo-yo dieter. Because if you remember you want to be happy, yo-yo dieting has never made anybody happy in the history of mankind, right? And so, or you're not going to beat yourself up in the gym because it doesn't make you happy. So when you have that backdrop, so I kept working with clients going like, remember, and I still, tomorrow morning, remember, you're trying to be happy. Let that dictate your actions. And that's why I realized like, I need a book that's really more in like the self-help realm, as you can see, didn't get into nutrition at all, and said, here's the backdrop. Before you do move one, get these ducks in a row and then see how it plays out in your life.
Yeah, and there's so much conditioning, like really deep conditioning that's keeping people in misery. That is keeping them from joy. And so and I'm sure you've seen that with people that you work with, right? Like it's almost like there's this block where they can't let joy in. Like they just have to fight for their limitations. And at this point, that's normal. How do you begin to guide them to get those gates open, to realize that there's another perspective that they can be choosing in how they look at, just the current things in their life, job, family, relationships that may lead to, some more happiness in the end?
Yeah, well, I mean, my primary job is as a small steps coach. So, I run a thing called the Small Step Intensive, and that's a private coaching thing. And I also run an online program called Small Steppers. My mantra over the last year or two has been mind first, body second. And what that means is before you do act one into diet or changing your fitness plan or anything else that you do, think first. So the first few weeks of my coaching is like they get nothing in the world done. And sometimes it's frustrating when I go, we're not there yet. I've been quoting Tom Robbins recently, who wrote Jitterbug Perfume. He's one of my favorite authors. And I reread Jitterbug Perfume about 8 months ago. And he's got this great quote, which I butcher all the time because I'm too lazy to get the actual quote out. But it's something like, prepare your mind for wisdom. And I love that. It's like, wait a second, wait. Before you bring in all the information, just hold on a second. Just hold on. Because if you don't have those kinds of, if you're not ready for it, then you don't know what to do with it. And that's why like people get so overinformed. I've spoken all over the country. I keep talking to people who know so much about nutrition. They're not healthy. Something's not adding up. And that's because they haven't learned how to manage their stress and learn how to implement what they know, and knowing themselves well enough to know when they know enough to at least begin. So my coaching is in a way acting on day one, not in the world, not changing your diet overnight, but defining and really getting to the point of like, do I know what my ideals are? Do I know what I stand for? Do I know what I want in my life? What would ideally be happening? Okay, now let's start to ease our way into those things at a rate that they understand and that keeps them at a manageable stress level so they can hang with it long enough for those things to become habits. Without that kind of coaching, they go balls to the wall on and everything. Change their diet overnight. Go see a personal trainer. Go to the and then they burn out and they wonder why they burnt out. And it's like, because that's not going to make you happy. You know what I mean? So it's this great irony. I was talking to a client last week of, you have to understand that momentary discomfort, in other words, not eating the very most beautiful, wonderful tasting food at every given moment, is going to make you more uncomfortable and happier at the same time. That's one of life's great ironies. Like not doing the drug is going to make you happier. The drug will make you feel better in the moment, but giving that up and being less comfortable in the moment is actually going to deliver you a happier life, which is about day to day. And that's a tough sell for people, right? Because they want to feel that good right there all the time. And it's usually a recipe for disaster.
Well, that's the book.
Oh, BJ's here. I didn't even realize.
Yay!
totally kidding. Damn it, you. Speak when you are spoken to, sir.
I shall be quiet.
Go ahead, BJ. Go.
I know. Yeah, don't put the muzzle on him when he comes. Like I love it when he talks.
Well, this is the constant information and data. Like you can get yourself lost in the books, the podcast, constantly feeding the mind. And so, like the running. Let's just talk about running aspect of things. I want to be a good runner, and the people are like, well, what kind of shoes do I want, and the watch, and I need to read this book, Born to Run, because everybody says I need to read this, and they just get lost down this road of all these things that just keep them from actually doing the thing that's going to make them do what they want to be better at, which is running. And the same thing we come across with swimming, and especially swimming. You can get so caught up in technique and where things need to be versus like be an active participant in the decision that you're making in the moment to move yourself closer to where you want to be. In this instance, running, go run. Like the first step is lace up any shoes that you have or no shoes and go run. If you want to eat better, look at the food in your cabinet that you have now, and does it make you feel good and move you towards eating healthy or not? And we just get so caught up in all the data and information. And what I love about your book is like you're just like screaming at them, like just work hard. We're not screaming because the guy has a very soothing voice. Who?
Oh, you did the audiobook?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that, but
great.
It's not that funny. Yeah.
But yeah, we just get so caught up in that. And how did we get there? How do we get to this point of like distraction?
Marketing. It's very powerful. Top 10 lists abound. There's just, every book you read, even good books on nutrition always inevitably have the top 10 things you have to eat every single day. Otherwise you're going to go crazy, but it's not true. And what I coach people to when they've got their mind in check and they've got everything is begin acting. And it's not like I'm anti-learning. Learn. But when you have a core understanding of yourself, you'll know when you know enough, like I said, but also you'll act as you're learning. So it's not like I'm opposed to researching shoes. Look, I transitioned to barefoot running years ago, and I because I read about it, but all the while I was running. So your coaching is spot on, which is get out the door. And as you're doing that and beginning the process of action, because that's what builds confidence and self-esteem and happiness, then concurrently, as you're moving your body, maybe you start by walking. Like if you've never run, start by walking. Move, get out the door, barefoot, I don't care. And then keep reading, but then keep learning and adjusting your thing. But all the while you're acting too. It seems to me, or at least the people that come to me or that I come in contact with, we're all about the learning way before we do the acting. And you can act on day one. That's hence my small steps approach. Like I always go, like, what can you do today, starting today? Well, if you look in your closet, like you said, and you see junk food because you've been eating that way for 30 years, the last thing I want to do is take that away from you. That's there for a reason. It makes you have pleasure in the moment. But can you add in something? Can you add in an apple per day? Can you add in a stalk of celery per day? Maybe that's your small step. Some people, they'll change their diets overnight because they have cancer and they're like ready to go. That's their small step. But for some people, it's literally like, look, I'm going to keep that in place. I'm going to add this little thing in. That's an action. That's getting the ball rolling. Then as you're doing that, do a little more research and act. And finally, when you find your balance, because you know who you are, then you're free to live the life you want to live.
Yeah, because you're tuned in to what it is that you want. You had mentioned that earlier, and that's something that sometimes when we ask people, like, what is it that you want? It's like deer in the headlights. It's they've never even considered this before, and perhaps maybe because of some kind of conditioning that knowing what you want is selfish.
Yes. And I argue good, and it should be, because that's how we're designed. So be the best selfish person you can be. That doesn't, the worst selfish person is greed. The unthinking selfishness is like, I want it all. I call in the book the Veruca Salt effect, from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I want it now. That's a kid's way of looking at the world. An adult selfishness is, look, I'm part of a family. I'm raising a family maybe. I've got friends and family. I'm living a society. So I want to take care of myself that also benefits the world at whole. In my first book, I call it holistic self-interest. But to give up yourself. I'm working with a client. He's like, I've been putting myself on a back burner for years, and it's at the expense of his family. I mean, frankly, it's at the expense. He's realizing that. He's like, I can't. That hence raising healthy parents, right? He's like, I've got to take care of myself for the good of me, but also more importantly to him, the good of his kids and his wife, right? So it is, and people have the hardest time. Like, what do I want? What is the ideal life? And like I said before, it's marketing, because if you look at a before and after photo, you go, that looks good. I'm going to do a diet because I want to get there as fast as I can, but they haven't defined what there is. I've never worked with a client who wants to lose weight and gain it back. They always want to keep it off, in which case, different ballgame altogether. Now you're talking about habit change. You're talking about lifestyle. You're talking about taking your time to do it right for forever. Very different than going on a crash diet. But if they don't have that knowledge, they go to the crash diet because they think that that's what they want. But if they think for 5 more seconds, they go, wait, that's not what I want. I don't just want a crash diet and gain it back like I've done 30 times. I actually want to keep it off and be a person who is healthy. Totally different ballgame.
You say in the book, this really stood out to me, that excitement is not happiness. And that was probably I knew that on some level because I see perhaps somebody who is, maybe just punching the clock and going through the motions, but then they sign up for a race and they get really excited about it. And it's like this momentary thing. Yeah. And just those 4 words, excitement is not happiness. Like it doesn't equal happiness, is so profound because they're putting all this weight into that sign up, that goal, and it's not going to bring them because it's outside of them, right? Yeah. And that excitement is only going to last so long.
Right. It's the same excitement about food and excitement about, and look, I'm not anti-excitement. I always want to be clear. Like I love doing things that are exciting. That's why I run races. That's why I started the race that I direct. It's exciting and fun. The question is, what are you going to do when you get home? When that wears off, it's like you have a life to get back to. And that's why I always joke, like my approach is the unsexy, mundane, boring. I'm the boring guy because I'm trying to help people raise their level of happiness day to day in sort of the mundane, boring side of things. Just how they are with their families, how they are eating most days. Then it gives them a really strong platform to jump off into things that are exciting. I actually argue if you take care of yourself most days, you can do more exciting stuff like run an ultra marathon or a race or a triathlon, whatever, like what you guys are doing, or even try a diet. I mean, try a new way to eat. But you're not doing it because you think it's going to deliver you happiness. You're doing it maybe to learn a new way to eat and maybe start to establish a habit of that. That's fine. But it is always going to come, you always got to come back. And if you look at really kind of objectively look back at the things like diets and things, I look at those things as drugs. I mean, we're going to those things for the excitement and that's fun. But if that's your main level of any kind of pleasure in your life, you're not dealing with the underlying issues. You're going to diet after diet because you get that accolades and you feel good for that momentary thing. And that's enough to kind of carry you through until it wears off, because it will. If you don't deal with the underlying stuff, then you go right back to another diet or whatever that model is for you. And it's rough. It really, really is rough. And it's actually hard. It's hard on your mind and body to do that, to constantly succeed and fail. And it's actually, I think, easier to maintain, but it's just not, a happy life in general. But people just don't have the tools to do it, and so that's why all of us are doing what we do.
It's not the sexy way, right? It's like
it ain't living a good life isn't sexy.
It's the Chemex. It's the pouring the water on the coffee and just letting it sit.
Yeah.
And sit and wait.
Yeah.
And wait.
Yeah.
And wait for good stuff.
And I will use coffee as any analogy for anything. So that was well played, sir.
Boom.
Well played. I'm about to do an I roast my own beans. Do you guys know that about me?
Oh, I think I heard. Oh, you know what? Linda told me that. Linda was telling me that you were roasting your own beans.
I love Linda. By the way.
I know. We love Linda. Linda is our production assistant now.
I know she is. When she emailed, Linda Lang is one of my favorite people literally in the entire world. Like, period.
Us too. She's like an angel.
No, she literally is. She's like otherworldly. No, I love her so much.
I met her picking up my race number.
At my race.
At your race.
Yeah.
And she helped us put our first cookbook out. And then we put a call out because we're like buried in the details. And we put this call out on the podcast and she answered it. Like, again, just coming back into not that she was ever out of our lives, but walking back into our lives at the exact right moment. And she's one of our favorite people too.
She's a talent and she's a super cool. But anyways, and she's volunteered. She volunteered for like the first 3 years. She came out with her family. Her brother has run the race. Yeah, Kevin is awesome. Anyways,
we got to get her back out there.
Totally. Yeah. Well, hopefully cross my fingers for 2022. I had to cancel. You guys know I had to cancel the last 2 years because of COVID. Stupid COVID.
So COVID-19 ago.
Are we talking about AeroPress? Because I think you think.
Oh yeah. So anyways, so I've been roasting my beans. Sorry, I got total tangent.
Oh yeah. So you're roasting your beans.
So I've 20 years been roasting my beans, and now I have I finally stumbled upon my perfect AeroPress. Have you guys used an AeroPress before?
No,
we have not.
Oh. It's insane. I'm like a cult guy around the AeroPress. I love it so much. Anyways,
Game changer?
Kind of. It's a one-off coffee thing that is like the best. I've had the best cups of coffee in my entire life in my own kitchen. Ever. Period. I've been to all sorts of great coffee houses. The best one, because it's home roasted, first of all, just to where I want it to be, and then the AeroPress. So I'm about to do a video on my YouTube channel about my AeroPress method. That's how crazy I am.
But it's not bringing you happiness, but it's adding to your happiness.
It's giving me excitement and happiness.
Right. Because you're dealing with your underlying issues.
Oh, totally. Which is caffeine, caffeine need.
Oh, yeah, totally dealing with it.
I solve that problem. But that's actually a perfect example. Like, coffee is something I love, but I manage it. I have 2 cups of 2 cups a day max in the morning, and I would drink it all day, but then I would not feel good. So that was a thing, that because I used to drink more coffee and then I wasn't sleeping well and I got injured when I was running. And so it's like one of these things, like I want to keep it in my life. So I make sure that I don't do it too much, and that's it. People can perceive that as restriction. I'm like, no, that's a trade. I'm like, look, I'll do some management here so that I can keep doing this because I dig it. Right. And so that's the kind of mindset around, what I coach, basically.
But you change that. So most people would say it's all or nothing. Like I'm not gonna have any coffee, or I'm gonna have coffee. Like I'm gonna drink a shitload of it. The other thing is like I can sit with it. This feeling of, okay, well, 2 seems to be enough, and I still get what I want, but it's not everything. But I don't have to give it up. And you're sitting with that that back and forth, and you're understanding how your mind is operating, so that you can have it. You can have what you enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I always say all or nothing ends up nothing. I'm so over and I may have said that in the book, I don't remember. But perfectionism, I deal with that in the book. This idea of I don't do it because I have to do it perfectly. I go, what is perfect? Never making a mistake. So that's inhuman. Like we make mistakes. So being a perfect human, somehow being a non-human that is a robot, So same thing with all or nothing. It doesn't really work. I hate the thing, everything in moderation, except when it comes to ethics. Like when I speak, sometimes I joke, I go, listen, here's something I don't even do in moderation ever. I don't kill people, not even a little bit. Like there's certain things ethically, like that's all or nothing. I get it. But in terms of behaviors in the world, if it's not crossing ethical lines with you, if you go to this all or nothing kind of perfectionist way of doing, usually it creates inaction or at least failure. Because it's too much. You're holding on too tight. It's going to break.
Holding on too tight. Gripping
so
to
diet,
life.
Put willpowering through some diet and start trying, and then boom, it's overwhelming. You can't do it.
So this is a good subject to dive into a bit, detachment, right? Letting go. Because when we try and cling to anything, I mean, think about it. You were just doing like the physical motion of it, like hanging on. It creates tension, and tension is not going to equal happiness. So can you speak a little bit about like this art or ability to let go, or practice to let go or detach, or so that you can open up to maybe some new habits or perspectives that will bring you happiness?
Yeah, I mean, my bachelor's degree is in philosophy. So by the time I went back to learn, to become a nutritionist and later the coaching and the running and the breathing and everything, it's always with a backdrop of philosophy, because it always comes down for me to the ethic of it, the thinking of it, this idea of, managing your stress, understanding yourself, self-knowledge, so that if you find yourself getting into overwhelm, you back off. And that's when I was just talking to BJ about the idea of all or nothing. Like backing off can be the most successful thing you ever do, but we were not trained for that in the modern world. No pain, no gain. Got to push forward. And sometimes it doesn't work. And knowing yourself makes you very adept, if you take your time with it, to know what you can control and what you can't control. And trying to control diet 100%, I'm going to eat 100% healthy, means you will give up things like social issue, social engagements, travel. If you can't eat the perfect, people who are afraid to have a drop of oil because it's going to kill them. And I wish that were an exaggeration, but I just had a conversation with a guy, and literally he's SOS, salt, oil, sugar. Mm-hmm. So when I called him, this is at the resort, he wanted to come. I said, listen, we can do that. He goes, well, a little salt or oil. He goes, a little salt or sugar won't kill me. But that didn't apply to oil. He thought a little bit of oil would kill him. I mean, literally kill him. And it's like, talk about getting in the weeds. I said, look at I don't want to talk about the resort too much, but when we use do the potatoes, the kitchen will do like a very light dusting of spray oil. And I said, listen, per serving of potatoes, like it's negligible calories of oil. He goes, I don't care about calories. I care about fat. And I was like, that's calories. He'd been to Esselstyn's this and Esselstyn's that and these retreats, and he couldn't even understand the basics. He's so deep in the weeds that he's so stressed about food. That is holding on too tight. That is trying to control a narrative that you cannot ultimately fully control. And if you try, your health will fail because of that level of stress. And that's a tough argument. Was why why I'm passionate about what I do, because I want to go, you let go, you have more control. And that's the weirdest thing. Let go of these areas because you can't, that's out of your, but control these areas and you got it dialed in.
Yeah, because you got to remember all your hard lines. And so we had Rip Esselstyn on, and we just had Dr. Goldhammer on, so oil-free, SOS-free. And what it brought to, well, no, that's all perspectives.
I agree with it nutritionally. I just am watching it in the world freak people out and make them
that's what
crazy.
I'm talking about. So we started looking, I started looking at the amount of oil I was using, and I was using in my perspective, way too much. Like glug, glug, glug on the vegetables because I like that.
We read it's a good fat.
Yes.
Olive oil is a good fat. No, it's junk food. And I don't eat oil most days, but I don't care if I do sometimes either. And that's sort of like, and some of those guys they're geniuses and they're great. I've quoted them in my books. My issue with them isn't about knowledge, but sometimes they don't quite do a good enough job, in my opinion, about setting context and saying, listen, yes, it's ideal if you minimize or if you have heart issues, to be mostly oil-free. But a little bit's not going to kill you. If you're traveling and you're on vacation and you have something that has a little bit of oil in it, it's going to be okay. If all in all you're mostly eating whole plants and not, there's never a context. It's always like, here's your information. Good luck. And then they go into the world and they got to go to a party on Saturday and they can't go, or they bring their food with them and they're the crazy person who brings their food to a party, and so it's like stress inducing.
Yeah. This is exactly what you're talking about with the getting back to the mind first, body second.
That's right. Mind first, body second.
So, I'm plant-based, I'm eating really well now. And then you go and you binge and then you're like, oh my God, I'm totally off it now. You didn't really address the opportunity in the mind to say like, it's okay. Like you can jump right back on. I have the power of choice to get back on. Yes, always. And they don't, I feel like they
forget that it's a choice.
Yes.
They forget, and vegans, by the way, you guys are you're vegan.
Yeah.
And I don't even use the word that much, but the angry vegan, like the pissed off vegan, the vegan who's walking around getting in people's faces all the time. It's like, you chose that in theory to be happier in your life. If you forget that, why would anybody want to do what you're doing if you're walking around pissed off all the time?
Yeah.
It's always a choice. Like we talked about before you guys turned the recording on, like I crave McDonald's. I could get McDonald's right now. Nobody is setting the rules for me to not go to McDonald's. I'm 52. I can go there. I have the money to do it and I can go there. I don't, because it's a choice. It's not restriction. I don't feel good I wouldn't feel good doing it even though I crave it. Right? So to remember that what you do is a choice, and but that takes effort to create and manage that mindset to always come into your life most of the time, remembering that what you're doing is a choice. Then it makes things a lot easier because you're like, this is my choice. I cannot do it also. So if I'm doing it, it's because it makes me feel better. Boom, moving on. And you just get very good about doing that.
Yeah, this gripping it creates a lot of tension, and so this information, it's like what we always say is like, take what resonates and leave the rest. So I got curious after hearing the oil stuff. I got curious about the salt, oil, and sugar. I realized I'm dumping salt on things, and but it also brought awareness to like, have a little bit more ownership. Like, are you reading the labels? And I feel like I'm getting plenty of oil in the food that I'm getting, the hummuses, the pestos, the things like that. So I'm like, I don't need the glug, glug, glug in the saute pan. And it's actually really tasty with vegetable broth. So I don't feel like I'm depriving myself. I don't feel like I've got this hard line. I was just in Costa Rica at the beginning of April, and the food was wonderful. And I know there was oil in it and everything, but I did not pay attention to any of it. I just enjoyed the food.
Yeah, exactly. One thing to consider, and this is just, I'm going to speak as a nutrition nerd, is stress weakens digestion.
Yes.
So if you're super stressed around food, I've worked with people who've come to me for nutrition advice, and I go, your diet's pretty darn good. If you're having problems, the level of you with stomach aches and gut issues, address your stress, then address your food. But again, mind first, body second. Address your stress, and then address your food. And I would say that even for somebody with a bad diet, because if they don't address their stress first, they'll willpower through a diet change, but then they'll end up failing. That's why, again, that's the yo-yo dieting thing. It always still, for me, comes down to learn the tools to manage your day-to-day stress as best you can. Understand there's going to be peaks. Sure, we all have bad days. But in general, on the balance, can you manage your stress so that you're just stressed enough to grow and test yourself and evolve, but not too much and not too little? And you learn to do that, then you get into whatever diet you want to do or whatever way to eat you want to eat. But understand the effects of stress on our bodies. Blood pressure, cholesterol, fat around the midsection, weakened digestion. These are issues of chronic stress in the modern world. If you don't address them, food will not be enough to take care of you.
Yeah. Digestion is huge.
And neither will exercise.
If we all just kind of paid attention to what our digestion was, I think we get a lot of information there. There's a lot of information.
Well, look, I'm really passionate these days about my oxygen advantage breathing instruction. Like, been coaching people in this breathing technique, which is very, very focused on stimulating the vagus nerve, creating a healthy vagal tone. They call it nerdy. But anyways, the vagus nerve, 90% of the information traveling along the vagus nerve comes from the body back up to the brain, including the gut bacteria. So what is the vagus nerve? It's the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, which is the rest and digest side. So we're clearly more in the sympathetic realm. We're over-breathing. We're breathing like too much, and we're not digesting well. So it is part of the puzzle of living well, is managing. It's the biggest part. It's like the stress umbrella, I call it. And then within that is exercise and everything else. But you can exercise too much. You guys know that, right? What happens if you go beat yourself up every day for 4 hours and you're not nutritionally sound and you're not mentally, what's going to happen? Injury or sickness. And certainly digestion is going to fail in that sense too, right? So it's that whole part of that same puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, how does that breathing work? Can you give a quick overview of what your practice is?
Oh yeah, no. I'm kidding. Yeah, of course.
No, you got to sign up for his $99.
Yeah,
give us just enough. Give us just enough so that we're curious.
Well, so
that's what we do. We have people on and we milk them for their expertise.
Yeah, totally. No. I will. Okay, so you guys, I have to trust that you will say, Sid, you are being too nerdy right now. You've got to stop, okay? Because I'm going to start talking about this, and I'll try to keep my response truncated. But you guys lift a finger if I'm just like, oh God, here he goes again, okay?
Okay. Do you have a preference on which finger gets lifted?
Yes, I totally do. And
okay.
we know.
I got you. Yeah, I got you.
We're on the same page. Anyways, and so here's the as much of it in a nutshell as I can do for this breathing technique, or just in general, functional breathing in general. CO2, which is the byproduct of exercise and everything, it comes into our bloodstreams and we exhale it. And as it gets transferred into the lungs, we exhale it, CO2. And everyone goes, oh, it's bad. Well, it turns out that CO2 is the fundamental marker it's the trigger that when it allows to come up enough in the bloodstream will trigger the release of oxygen into the tissues. So you can breathe a lot, 20 breaths, 9, I think it's the average American or modern human, 9 to 24 breaths a minute. That's too much, by the way. So a lot of oxygen is coming in and we go, well, that's great because we want oxygen. So the oxygen comes in, goes in the lungs, transfers to the bloodstream, attaches to the hemoglobin. But if it's not in the presence of enough CO2, it will stay with the hemoglobin and not get released to the bloodstream. The trick is that we don't care if the oxygen is in the blood, we want it into the tissues. That's where we need it. So the oxygen advantage approach desensitizes your body to CO2. CO2 is also the thing that triggers your brain to breathe. So right now in our sympathetic kind of overstressed state, at the slightest little bit of rise of CO2, we got to breathe. We have that breathing. So the work of this, and I do like a month-long process because it takes a while. The work of this is to desensitize your body to the presence of CO2, thereby allowing longer and greater amounts of CO2 to exist in your bloodstream, thereby triggering more release of oxygen into the bloodstream. So with various exercises of holds on the exhale. Now, I'm a big Wim Hof practitioner. I've been doing it for every day for almost 4 years. But this is there's crossover. But oxygen advantage is a different ballgame. It just is. Anyways, so I'm teaching people techniques using various breath hold methods and always holding on the exhale, transitioning to nasal breathing 100% of times, except for in extreme athletes. Like if you're sprinting, you'll transition to mouth. Otherwise, breathing in through the nose. This is how crazy. I've been taping my mouth shut for the last 6 months, transitioning to breathing through the nose because for years I was a mouth breather. My sleep has improved. My pace in my running has improved. I run with my nose 100% now. And desensitize, and at the same time practicing breath holds to desensitize yourself. So it's a slowing and a lightening of breath. It's very quiet. It's about your aim is about 6 breaths per minute. So it's about 1 breath every 10 seconds. So about an inhale for about 4 seconds and a slow exhale for 6. And it's that extended exhale that stimulates the vagus nerve. Again, related to digestion, related to anxiety, related to stress, related to mental health, related to emotions. I mean, it's incredible. It's super cool. You couple that with some good healthy exercise and some healthy food, and you got a really nice package of managing your stress day to day. It really is cool. So did I nerd out too much?
No, not at all. We love that.
I love this. I was just talking to because swimming, running, you're on land. Swimming, it adds a different element
swimming
to things.
Is regulated with your breath just because of, but you can slow that down a little bit.
Yes.
But how do you guys coach on that?
Well, what we find most often is, people are coming to us as not swimmers. So to be in that unfamiliar environment, the first thing isn't about how your arm enters the water or how you're kicking. It's like, how can you control your breathing? Because the panic and shortness of breath is really where the anxiety comes from. And then you start to kick harder, and then lactic acid builds in the body, and then you start to panic, and then you grab onto the raft and all that. So backpedal. Backpedal to the breathing, like before you jump in the pool.
Yes, interesting.
Work on
and
the
you
breath.
have to breathe through your mouth when you're swimming.
You have to.
So the coaching for me would be at all other times when you're not swimming, working on doing breath work so that when you're in the pool, you're desensitized to CO2, you can extend. I mean, I'm not a swimming coach. I have no expertise in this, so you correct me if I'm wrong. But are you trying to extend it such that you can take more strokes between breaths? Because it seems to me that would be more efficient, or you don't care.
I love that. That's what you would think. But you want to breathe often because you need fuel to move faster through the water. So if you're
but if you're I'm going to argue only to say this: if you're breathing less but more efficient, and you're actually getting more tissue oxygenation based on your ability to exist with more CO2, in that sense, would it behoove you to extend your breathing because you can get more strokes with the same oxygen?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, so that's sort of end game potentially.
Yeah, that's not the beginning game by any means.
What is a guy like Michael Phelps like? How often does he breathe?
So
how many strokes?
Let's distinguish between pool swimming and like open water swimming or triathlon swimming.
Okay,
because those are different.
Okay, then tell me.
Yeah, so Michael Phelps was probably breathing every 2 or 3 strokes, and a stroke is just one arm in the water, maybe even 4. So 4 strokes, and then he's breathing because he's got the lung capacity. He's able to. His conditions are known. Like you're going to see a black line, you're going to get to the other side, you're going to flip and come back. Yeah. Open water, you've got a lot of things happening. You've got people around you.
Waves,
you've got the unknown waves. You got a sight for the buoy. You're in a wetsuit. So a lot of these factors come into play so that you want more oxygen. You want to feed the system, not deprive the system. Mm-hmm. But somebody like Michael Phelps, that's what they do in the pool. Like they're controlling their breath. They can probably hold their breath to the other end and back under the water. So in that sense, and they're only swimming for 45 seconds to 2 minutes, whereas people in triathlon are going, 30 minutes up to 2 hours.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
But I
love that concept.
I think this goes along with, mind first, because there's a lot of chaos in the mind about the water and panic. And so that breathing exercises before you get in the pool, like we have our athletes do a series of breath exercises prior to a race start. And they all serve a different purpose. There's a relaxing breath. There's like a breath of fire that will kind of get their energy up. There's a tense and release, right? Like clean out those deep corners. And then a nice 3-part, like nice full breath in, nice controlled breath out. And that's all to kind of prepare kind of all the different angles for what they're about to experience. And of course, like triathlons, at least on the bigger scale, like Ironman scale, the swim has become much more accessible to people. Like back in the mass start day, it was like throwing everybody, 2,000 people into a washing machine. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But if you were, somebody that didn't have that mindset around the fact that all you have to do is turn your head and you'll get a breath, or even if you get a fist or a mouth of water, you still have another side, you'll get that breath. So I think the mindset, it's got to be, the mind is first and the body's going to follow.
Yeah. Well, and when I was saying about the vagus nerve, how 90% of the information comes from the body up to the mind, it means that there's a connection where if you can just simply, if you're stressed about things, leave them. Start to control your breath, slow your breath down, get to about 6. And what you're doing is, in a sense, it's weird, but you're telling your body, I'm not under stress. Then your body sends back to your brain and says, we're not under stress. It's like reverse physiology. Instead of you trying to address what's stressing you out, I'm worried about the race, I'm worried about, like, what am I going to, you start to control your breath physiologically, then the body sends a message back to the brain and goes, listen, we're not under stress, we're good. And then everything kind of subsides. Yeah. So it's like a reverse way of looking at it, but it actually works. It's crazy. I've been doing it for now every day. I actually have an app. it's not my app, but I'm not connected to it, but it times out this sound, a 4-second in and a 6-second out. So in my drive to the resort, to Stanford Inn, every day to and from, about 17 minutes of just, and I mean, it takes me about 2 minutes to get my breath to lighten to where it's light and very quiet. It's all diaphragm. There's no chest breathing. It all goes very deep into the lungs. And by the time I get there, it's like a whole nother world. I mean, it really is like an incredible thing.
Seriously.
And then and then I find myself breathing this way more throughout the day because, of course, the habit's established, right? So
I mean, talk about creating a better world. Could you imagine people who are walking into their job every day in an optimized state of oxygen absorption?
How about at home after a rough day? And walking in the door like that. I talk about the raising healthy parents, like the work I had to do to be the father that I ideally see myself, but just don't pull off day to day. But how to be that guy more often. Breath came into that. Calming down on my way to work. So on my way home, so when I come in, my phone goes on the counter and I'm with my family. Like that work to do was, breath was included in that work. Breathing on the way home so that I walk in the door the guy I want to be. And that is this. I mean, it's, we have control over that. We have control over the way we breathe. That's one thing we can do. Free. It's free. You know what I mean?
Everything is a practice. Even people who are stuck in negative thought or complaining, like that's still a practice. Like they had to practice that. There was one complaint and then there was another complaint and then they started complaining.
I've got the online program. I just went onto Slack because there's a Slack group and I just quoted William James, the psychologist. And he goes, I love this quote. He goes, unhappiness comes from the fact that we listen to ourselves rather than talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We hear the mind chatter about you're negative, you're stupid, you're fucking baby. Instead of going, no, here's who I am, talking to myself, consciously talking to myself. That's the mindset. Instead, we listen and we believe that language because we were told when we were kids that we were this way or that way, and it gets incorporated into our brains, and we just hear that and we start to identify with that when it could be completely at odds with who we truly are. And so I love that quote because I'm like, that's exactly the work I do. And I'm not a psychologist, but that is it's a conscious definition of who am I? That's the question before you do act one. Who am I? What's my ideal life? That's talking to yourself instead of listening to all that craziness. And we want that to go away, all that mind chatter. I go, don't touch it. Replace it with the talk. Replace it with conscious action and talk. And then that stuff just gets quieter and quieter.
Yes, it does. Because your focus is the invitation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's again, simple. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Just the separation. You've just created the separation between you're not your thoughts. It's simply
that's right.
Like
it's like I want to stop thinking these negative thoughts. I go, good, do something about it. Leave the thoughts alone. They're going to come. But what are you doing in your life? I love when I can help people get this response when they hear the chatter, I'm lazy. If they can say, yeah, but I'm doing something about it, then the chatter makes no difference. And if all they're doing something about right now, I have a client right now who's literally his exercise right now for a whole host of reasons is a 5-minute walk per day. But guess what? He's doing something about it. If he hears I should be exercising, he can say immediately, but I am. I'm acting. Day one, I'm acting. And he'll get up, he'll get there, but it's recreating the habit right now. It's 5 minutes a day. But eventually it'll turn into something more, right? He goes, I'll never be an ultra athlete. I said, you'd be surprised, brother. I didn't run my first ultra till I was 46. And so you never know. And he's been to the race. He's actually he's a local. I'm like working with a local for the first time in a really long time.
Oh my God, he's still gonna do the race.
He's got to be.
He's still gonna do the race.
I know. I'm like, you'd be surprised, dude. You never know what's gonna happen.
You never know what 5 minutes is gonna take you. Consistently.
I've seen crazy stuff. I've seen a stalk of celery turn into a pretty darn healthy diet over time. I've seen a 1 minute mini trampoline per day turn into walking a half marathon. I've seen stuff, but it takes time. It's not overnight. It's not going to go in People magazine as an overnight, before and after shot. Yeah. It's work. It's hard work. Best work.
Yeah, it would be like the worst. No, they would never sell it because it would be like 59 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And it
6
happened.
years and just boring shit every day for 6 years. Wow, I want a piece of that. How can I sign up for that, J-Lo? Just what? God, People magazine wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Do you have a favorite truth in your book, or one that you had a lot of fun writing, or one that you had to self-regulate because you just thought you might explode?
No, I mean, I like them all. I think probably the example one, I always come back to that just because I think because I'm getting, my wife would say I'm getting a little crotchety, but I'm so cognizant of, BJ swore first, by the way.
I laid the groundwork, yeah.
Okay, I just want...
I can't... That's awesome. Thank you, BJ.
I'm just... Okay, so it's okay, right?
Please.
Anyways,
okay.
but so my bullshit detector has gotten so keen. You know, like, if somebody is not walking the walk, I just have no patience for them. I'm like, go fix whatever... If I perceive that anyways, I could be wrong, but if I'm perceiving somebody as just blah, 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 you guys should do this, and I don't perceive them as actually living what they're talking about, I have no interest. I'm like, go away. Go fix or coach somebody out. Like, I don't want to hear about it. So I'm always, because I work with people help me, you know? So, you know, I had to hire a marketing team to help me relaunch Small Steppers. I looked to them and what they were doing, and what I want to know, that they're not just talking. I want to know that there's something underneath there. So I think living the example is, and parents that I work with and raising healthy parents, being that example is more powerful than what you say. And it translates more than what you say. And it's also important what you say, but who you are, and are you able... Sometimes people go like, how can I be a good coach? I go, take some time before you coach anybody to do it yourself, because then you've been through it. And I struggled still with food day to day. I struggle with all the same things that people struggle. I just have, I think, a pretty darn good approach to get it done most days, and I'm really productive because of it. But I struggles there. I'm a normal guy with the same struggles. I overeat and I binge and I gain a little weight, and the whole thing. But I've just kind of done a thing where I can manage most days really, really well. And if I get off the tracks a little bit, it's not by much. It's like, okay, off the and get back on, right? And so it just takes time. But I'm trying. Over 50% of my job is making sure that I keep myself healthy and happy.
Yeah.
Literally, like, I look at my coaching, I'm like, every time I go for a run, that is because of the work I do. Every time I eat a good, healthy diet, and I'm raising my family, and I'm addressing working for my marriage. Does it not take work to maintain a good marriage, right? But we want to hack our diet. Well, it's the same thing. It takes work to engage in your life, to be the person you want to be. And if you don't address those things, they're going to fail. If I don't communicate with my wife, it's not going to be a successful marriage. I've been married 26 years. I have a good marriage not because we don't argue. We do. How do we handle it? How do we communicate most days? How do we maintain it day to day, the boring stuff? How do we maintain that? It's the same exact picture.
Yeah. Living the demonstration. That's probably...
It's the hardest thing. People don't want to... Everyone's willing to, comment culture. Everyone's willing to tell you what you should do. What you should do with this, what you should do with that. Is like, I don't want to know.
I know.
I just got an email from a guy who goes, I like your book, but I had some problems with it. But maybe you don't want to hear that because you talk about comments in your book and turning off your YouTube comments. And I wrote back, I was like, yeah, you're right.
Oh my God, I love that guy. He's like, but I really want to comment.
You should hear this.
He wants it. He wants it. I go, look, I asked for input on my book. I went to some friends who I knew would be honest, and they told me things they liked and didn't like. I used some of their advice. Some I did, some I didn't. A couple. But in general, no, I don't care about the general public's comments. I don't read Amazon reviews. I don't care. If you want to review, go ahead. I'm sure this hurts me, but I don't care. I want people to either get something from my book or not get something from my book, but learn, and then hopefully it enriches them, and that would be amazing, and they're happier for it. But I'm not out in there going, what do you guys think? It's book's out. It's out of my hands. I got nothing. I can't do anything about it right now. So it was a weird, I wrote a very nice email, but I said, respectfully, I don't care.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing. I was like, I don't want your input. I don't care. It's not going to help me. I can't rewrite the book. I'm proud of the book as it is. And I hope that he said it, most of it he really liked, but he had some issues with it. I go, then learn from that. Learn from the issues. What do you don't like, and make that happen in your life and live better for it. Because
once you know what you don't like, then you know what you do like.
Exactly.
Boom.
That was in one of the truths. Exactly.
Yes.
Boom. That's exactly it. And that's what I want people to get from the book. Don't waste your time commenting. That's why I turned off YouTube comments like a year ago. I was like, I don't just watch the video.
You were sharing
hate
with us
me or love me.
The kitty or the kitten. The video of the kitten was I think on our first podcast you were talking about.
No, it was somebody else. It was Lucho.
Like, how can you give a thumbs down for a cute cat video? Like,
I know.
Like, what kind of person are you? All right, let's, not really switching gears, but kind of. Let's talk about intermittent fasting. You've been playing around with a little bit of that.
A few years now.
We've been talking about a lot of it. Beej and I have been doing the intermittent fasting for a few years now, but we've started doing like once a week. And, again, no hard lines. Like this week, Beej was like, no, I'm like in this build phase for Ironman. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
But we've been fasting. I've been fasting for 24 hours once a week, and I'm loving it. I love the mind game. I love seeing my habits. I love seeing the impulses, and I love not I love practicing not responding to them. So I want to know your take on it and how you feel.
Yeah, well, I didn't. Did you guys see the video? Maybe you didn't on intermittent fasting. My take on it. I have two approaches to intermittent fasting, and here they are: physical nutrition and mental nutrition. So what I mean by physical nutrition, of course, is the intermittent fasting I've been doing for a few years. I usually about a 7-8 hour window of eating, right? Usually a few days a week, I will go from about a 24 hour. I'll go from dinner to dinner. Like I'll eat dinner and I won't eat again till dinner. That's just kind of, and I love those days. I honestly, it's the weirdest thing. I have more energy those days.
I know, me too.
It's the weirdest. I don't know physiologically what's happening, but it's like, so my runs are better. Like I didn't eat all day yesterday. I had dinner last night, finished eating at 7, got this morning, went for a run, and it's like effortless, and I haven't eaten. I'm just drinking water, and I'll have another cup of coffee, and then I probably won't eat until 3 or 4. It's like, it's just kind of working right now. But I also want to apply intermittent fasting to mental nutrition. In other words, what we feed our minds, social media, which I quit in 2018. But, social media, books, news, some good stuff, but taking a break from it, not inputting stuff into your head all the time, taking a break from that, so what is intermittent fasting is doing, it's allowing your body to do the business so while it's not digesting all the time, give it a break from digesting so that it can do the business, repair and fighting infection, all those kinds of things. That's what intermittent fasting is so good. You're eating during a window of daytime where your digestion is ready, your bacteria is ready for intake of food, and you're not eating around those windows so that your body can do the business. Same thing with the mind. Input, but take your break so that you're processing that nutrition, processing that stuff in your mind. And I'm just like a huge believer in it. I am also a believer that healthy diet makes a massive difference. I don't think you can eat whatever you want and just intermittent fasting and be okay. It's not brain surgery. You still have to feed your body the stuff it needs. But man, does it help you? The efficiency of the body goes way up. Otherwise, why would we have more energy with less calories?
I know.
Right?
I feel so good.
And I'm not doing caloric deficit. You're not like, I want to be clear, it's not caloric deprivation, intermittent fasting, but it kind of naturally went there for me a little bit because I was more aware of what I was eating and whether I was actually hungry or not. So overall, I am eating less calories, not on purpose. I didn't try to regulate my calories. I'm eating whatever I want in that 8 hour window, but it has taking that break allows me to be more in touch with my body.
Yeah.
And have you had that same thing?
Yeah. My body is going to have to break this down. It's going to have to figure out what the hell this ripple chip is. It's going to have to figure that out. So it has brought me to a higher level of mindfulness around my eating. But I love this idea of intermittent fasting mentally. I think that's magic. I love how you brought that to the surface. I do it pretty much every day. Usually shut the phone off and stuff around. Yesterday it was at 4:00 and it's just like bliss, And I always say if something awful is going to happen between 4 p.m. and the next day, I'd like to be clear and well rested to receive the news.
That's a great way to look at it. And by the way, we did exist as a species before cell phones.
I know.
I love how everyone can reach us at all times. It's like maybe it kind of sucked to not be able to reach somebody in the moment, but it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah, well, we didn't know any different, so it just was.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah, so takes a, guess what, mind first body, it takes a conscious effort to take a break from input into your head. Just like it takes a conscious effort to not feed yourself all from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is not that crazy. People get up at 6, they have eggs and toast or whatever, and then at 10 o'clock they're I have clients who get up at midnight and eat. And to sort of get away from it. And then all of a sudden they're eating less because they're not doing the midnight snack, but yet they're getting up in the morning way more rested, way more energized, less calories, just higher efficiency. So yeah, I am a proponent.
What do you,
no doubt about it.
What do you break the fast with? What's a go-to food? Or is it, it's probably pretty ingrained in you now, but what would you recommend people?
I'm just been a fruit person for years. I love fruit. I wish people would eat way more fruit, so it's just such an easy thing to digest, period. So when I break my fat, the first thing I eat generally in any given day is going to be fruit. Unless I'm just fasting to dinner, in which case I'll have one of my big frickin' salads that if you saw that video, but big frickin' salad. And then, whatever else we're eating. Last night we had falafels, and a big salad. And I hadn't eaten anything during the day. Again, for your listeners, I'm not advising anybody to right now, tomorrow, don't eat anything till dinner. I will say it took me a good 6 to 8 months, probably 6 months, to transition to any kind of intermittent fasting. At that point, it's more like 10 hours, 10-hour window. Don't go overnight. Your body is not your body. I call it habit hunger. If you've been getting up at 6:30 every morning and having your coffee and having your toast, you're going to feel hungry at 6:30 tomorrow morning. Your body is used to having that. It knows when to. So it takes a little time. I had a client I finished up with about a month ago. She got into intermittent fasting and she had tried it before, burnt out. Guess what? So we went by 15-minute increments. Didn't touch her dinner time. She ate dinner at the same time, but she went from eating at 7:30, then eating at 7:45. Just 15 minutes for a few days. Then 7:45 to 8. Started at 8. And just took her time. And all of a sudden she went from 8 to 9 because she's like, once she broke that little habit, she's like, I'm not even hungry. I just didn't eat till 9. And then she was like in the window almost within like a month,
That's awesome.
And it was really cool.
How does this work as a family? You're the one who's intermittent fasting. Maybe your kids aren't, your wife isn't, or maybe they are. But how does that?
Well, my wife does it now, and I didn't. She just loves it. So she has fruit. Like she'll have fruit around noon, noon or 1, and we're done eating by 7. My kids get up, and they usually, with school, they're eating by 8, but then we're done eating by 7. They're still in an 11-hour window. I'm not pushing them into anything dietary. Like I don't want them to have, I don't want them to be too militant or restrictive about that kind. We're plant-based, but they don't eat 100% healthy either. They have treats and things like that. But yeah, so they probably manage, I would say most days, 10 to 11 hour window. We just don't eat that late, during the week. Like because my wife and I are intermittent fasting, we finish eating by about 6:30 or 7. So do my kids. And so just naturally they're kind of finishing eating and having a couple hours to digest before they go to bed. So they're still, my twins are 12. They're still sleeping 10, 11 hours a night. I have a 17-year-old. She sleeps at least 9 to 10 hours a night. They've always gotten really good hours to sleep in.
Nice. All right. So 2022 Mendocino 50K. Do you know that BJ is signed up and it's going to be his first ultra?
You haven't run an ultra? You've run Ironman triathlons, but not an ultra?
Yeah. I was waiting for your race.
You're going to be his first.
You're going to be my first.
Oh man, you're going to kill the race. That's
in my heart.
That's so excellent. I love that. Unfortunately, we're full.
He's already in it. He's already registered.
I know. You're in. Like you're in. I'm getting all everybody who was registered for 2020 is in for 2022 if they want it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I really thought 2021 I could do it. But frankly, it was two things. One, I was a little hesitant because I didn't want to have to. I would follow the county's regulations and I'm pro science. So I'm like, listen, so we're going to mask it. That's not that you've been to the race. I didn't want to do the race until I could do the race the way the race is supposed to be. I didn't want to do a half-ass race. I didn't want to do a masked race. I want to do a race where like everybody can do the race the way it's intended to be, right? So 2021 was going to be sort of a truncated kind of spacing people out. And I was like, oh, good Lord, it's not fun. I love the race is not a moneymaker for me. It's got to be fun for me. Otherwise, I ain't doing it, period. Like, I'll shut the race down if it ever gets to be not fun. I have no invested anything in it other than pure fun and joy. So it's hard work, but, takes hard work to be happy. So anyways, but the other thing is state parks was like, we're not giving permits. So it wasn't even on the table.
Yeah. I
kept bugging them saying anything, and they're like, nothing. So I finally pulled the plug. I said, okay, 2022. I can't remember what the date is. April 17th.
I think it's the 22nd or something like that.
That feels
you
would
about
know
right.
better than I would.
That feels about right.
So, seriously, she knows. I don't even know the date of my race in 20. I put it on the website. Now I don't remember what it was. Anyways, but yeah, so it sells out very quickly. So basically, anybody who has a number from 2020 is in. Then not everybody's going to want to run it, so there will be some spaces open that I will then open up to the public, and it might be limited. I have no idea because I keep that number right around 150, 160, no more than that, which is another one of the things I love about the race. So I'm just crossing my fingers. I was very surprisingly, to me, even depressed when 2020 got canceled. I was like wandering around my house with like the race hat on. Just it was like, because it's such a fun thing. And I love it so much, and it's stressful, but it's like so exciting. That's the excitement thing. That not having that was just it was a bummer. Like it really was. It hit me harder than I thought it was going to hit me. This year was not so bad, but the 2020 thing when I had canceled that race, I was like, oh my God. And I held out for a while.
Yeah.
I held out and I was like, I think I can do it. I think I could do it. And then it was like the very beginning of COVID because March was sort of the beginning and my race was April. So I was like, okay, maybe we can just do this one. Mm-hmm. And it just started looking bad. And I was like, no, I can't do it. Not in good conscience, So
yeah. And it's hard to hold out like that. We had a Costa Rica retreat, and we were like, like every day, just having that intention, not hanging on tight, but just like every day holding the intention, right now we're going to keep moving forward. We're gathering information every day. And then, they close the borders and, it's like, you can't run a race without a permit.
That's right.
But I'm feeling good about 2022.
I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think it'll be okay. And it's going to be emotional for me just to have that back. Cause I get a lot of returners, it'll be the fifth year of the race. I recognize a lot of faces and people just come back and they love it so much. And it's such a mellow, it's logistically the race I always wanted to run, like no parking issues, super easy. It's a loop. So you don't have to, no shuttle, like all that. So just everyone kind of gathers around and it's such a fun coffee and
amazing
scones
food.
And muffins from Stanford, India. So I get over them. My favorite point is when I say go and everyone runs to the thing, I go right to the coffee and scones. I'm just like, done. I have about a 2-hour window before I have to start worrying about anybody, or like an hour window before the aid station goes, we're missing somebody, whatever. So I have like that's my calm time because it's all to that moment where I say go, and then I just get a cup of coffee and I sit down and I've just had 2 hours of sleep, and I just sit down with a cup of coffee and a scone. I'm like, it's like the best.
It's the best. And all of us out there running are running scared, waiting for the burrito bar from the Stanford.
That's right. Oh yeah. By the way, we got whole thing for year 5, lasagna, garlic bread. We were going to we had it all lined up for 2020. It was going to be the 5th year. So it's happening. And we're doing, I don't have one here, but I'm doing hoodies.
What?
Hoodie. Super nice hoodie. I have one, not with the logo, but I had them send me one. It's great. It's a hoodie with the logo right on the
Sweet,
on the chest
dude.
there. Oh,
I'm psyched.
Yeah, it's a big, year 5 is going to be super
I'm
fun.
fired up. I'm going to start like suppressing some emotions so I can just have a good cry with you. Yeah.
You should suppress some emotions. You'll let it all out on race day.
Totally.
That's what I always say.
That's what I'm going to do. Awesome.
Yeah,
Sid, so good to talk with you, buddy.
You guys are great.
So great to
Thank
see
you. So much.
And we'll see you in April. But everybody needs to read this book. It's like, or do it on audio. It's an hour and 40 minutes, which, I pulled that up and I was like, another reason why I love this guy, an hour and 40 minutes. Like, that's so perfect.
Yeah. So the book is in sections, as you saw. So you can like grab it, couple pages, it's blocked off. Every truth is like in subsections, right? So real quick, do I have time for like just a little story?
Please.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I used to be, I don't know if you know this about me, but in LA, I was a full-time actor for like 10 years. And I was a musician. I had a band. So I'm pretty comfortable in terms of in front of a microphone and just performing and things like that. So when the audiobook came up, I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I can read. I have a nice setup here. I have a nice podcast. It's professional. And so I talked to the publisher and he said, yeah, you can do it. I thought he was going to say you read your own book, but he was like, yeah, they want an audition tape. So I was like, oh, audition tape. So I did a 5-minute reading of my own book and didn't get the part. I was like, God damn, that's pretty harsh, right? But it kind of makes sense. Like, I don't know, whatever. And so anyway, and so at first I was like, what? And then they got this total pro and they sent me a clip of him and I was like, we're fine. I just didn't want an annoying voice, which maybe they thought I was, but they told the publisher, they said, we just want it in a studio with a publisher, with a producer, and with COVID, we're not doing that. Like, we have a guy, we know where he is, he's got the setup, we're having him do it. And I was like, I totally get it. And honestly, to do that 5-minute clip took a while. It's a lot of pressure to read without any kind of flub. So it took me like 30 minutes to put that 5 together. So on one hand, I was also like, if I get this is going to be like a week of work, So anyways, so I didn't get the part to read my own book.
I love that. That's right. I
actually haven't heard the audiobook.
Oh, it's good. He does a really good job.
Yeah, good.
I feel like I've heard his voice before too.
He's done a bunch of work. That's the thing. They gave me his name and I was like, oh, he's done many, many books. So I was totally okay with it. Yeah.
That's right up there with getting fired from Domino's.
It's a little bit like getting fired from Domino's. Yeah, from Journey. From my manager, Journey. From my manager, Journey.
I know. Oh, man.
Journey Bartak. I'm not going to protect his name. Journey Bartak. If you're out there, this is what you did. You made it into my book.
You made me awesome.
You made it into my book. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love it. Love you, buddy. Thank you so much.
I love you guys too. I hope to see you in April. Thanks for having me on.
Hell or high water.
All right, cool.
All right, peace.